Welcome to another episode of The Rabbi and the Therapist. We had the pleasure of doing a previous episode with Rabbi Daniel Schonbuch, who recently came out with a new book entitled Viktor Frankl and the Psychology of the Soul. And we spoke at great length about that. Today we're going to be talking with him about what he sees in his practice, and I will leave it to him to describe the type of clients he sees. He is a licensed marital and family therapist. So, Rabbi Schonbuch, tell us a little about how long you've been seeing people and sort of the composition of your practice.
And we want the success stories.
Of course. I've been seeing people for about 13 years in New York. Mm-hmm. And the three most important issues I deal with as a therapist, one, are people that have trauma, whether it's sexual trauma or physical trauma, mostly from their childhoods. Number two are marital issues or dating issues, people that have trouble getting married. And number three are depression and anxiety, in that order.
Would you say that you have a primarily religious Jewish practice?
Yes, my practice is primarily Orthodox Jews, but I see people from all different backgrounds, Jewish, not Jewish, white, non-white, and everybody. Yeah.
Let's talk about marriage and family, because I think that affects everybody. The other two cases, yes, it's a problem, but let's talk about this, something that then, and hopefully in another time we can invite you back. But let's talk about the families. First of all, if there's one thing that you can tell a young couple within our community, what is that advice that you would give to the young man or the young lady before they're going to walk down to the chuppah?
Turn off your phone would be the most important things I would give advice when people are married, because when they get married, I've seen a lot of the young couples and young individuals come to me now, they're always on their phones. And if I just do some research, they're coming to me for marital problems, I say, take me through your evening routines. What are you doing in the early part of the evening? Well, they're always on their phones, and they go to sleep with their phones, and they're watching their shows on their phones. So I really believe, in general, internet technology and addiction from internet is a serious, very serious problem. It also leads to more anxiety and detachment with the couples. So I would say it's a very important thing they could work on.
So in lieu of being on social media, what should they be doing?
Well, they can be on it during the day, but make sure, I have an exercise called the daily temperature reading. I ask couples when they greet each other, make sure their phones are off, say hello to each other, and to share a few important things, some appreciation. Thank you for making a great dinner. Thank you for taking care of the home. Thank you for working so hard. Thank you for taking care of the kids. Whatever the appreciation is necessary, give it to your spouse. Number two, share some information about your day. Reflect on how your day was. Maybe you had some challenges. You can reflect on that as well. And then talk about your hopes, wishes, and dreams for the future. What are your spiritual ambitions? What are your family ambitions?
That'll bring it into another realm completely, but let's stick to the first 2 points that you made. First of all, by the way, feedback and appreciation is something that I think we all need to improve on. Feedback, we don't give our spouses, our loved ones, even to our children, enough feedback, and of course, appreciation.
Well, I don't know. You're talking to a therapist. He may counter by saying there's plenty of feedback, but it's relatively way too much negative feedback. Is that an accurate statement?
I would agree with that, right? You got to stay positive with your spouse. If you don't build up, John Gottman, the famous marriage therapist, talks about positive sentiment override PSO. You have to have positive feelings towards each other. That's what differentiates the successful couples from the non-successful couples. If you have more positive feelings, you could overcome arguments, debates, and problems that people have. But if people are on their phones and not connecting, they're not going to have positive feelings towards each other.
Well, we had an episode, we spoke about the addiction to the internet and the fact that people are getting too much information. There's too much noise within our relationships. Besides for shutting the phones, is there something more specific, or it's just shutting the phone and that's it? And what if they say, listen, for some reason they think they can't shut their telephone for whatever reason it may be? Do we have somewhat to getting around that?
The most important thing is listen to each other. More than what you say, it's how you listen. So hold back in speaking too much of negative things, as the doctor was saying, and more in reflective listening. Reflective listening, what you call active listening, is an extremely powerful tool. Many books have written about active listening for kids, for teenagers, for adults. It's the same skill to be applied in all. The famous book, How to Talk So Kids Will Listen, Listen So Kids Will Talk. What is it about? Active listening. If you study any marriage therapy books today, whether it's Gottman or Sue Johnson, Hold Me Tight, it's all about reflection. It's all about active listening. The couples that spend more time attaching like that have a better chance of succeeding. So definitely listening, keeping it positive, building up the positive feelings, and as well stay off the phone because it enables you to do that. And then you go to the phone afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, but both of you are talking a lot about individuals who are communicating with each other about themselves. What about something that's a little more active? Shared activities, for example. I think we all probably have a limited amount of things that are interesting for another person. There was a psychologist, very, very smart psychologist for couples therapy, David Schnarch, and he would always tell the joke. It's like, well, I can ask you. You walk into a restaurant, how can you tell which is the couple that's married?
What does he say?
Do you know? Do you have any ideas?
They're looking at everybody else's.
No, it's the couple that's not talking
Right.
to each other. But why are they not talking to each other? Because after all this time, they know precisely
What the person's going to
what
say.
what the partner's interested in listening to. Okay? We don't always have something our days are not always so interesting, and we don't always have such incredible ideas about what to talk about. What could couples do that it's more active, so that it's a more shared value or a more shared activity, rather than just sitting there and spouting off how your day was?
Well, I don't think just talking to each other is enough. I agree with you 100%. Couples need to spend time together. We call it date night, remember? Remember the date nights we used to have? But people can't do them because they're so busy with the kids. But then their marriages go down. So I always ask them, when was the last time you went out with your spouse? One of the first questions I asked them. Most of the people that are struggling in their marriages tell me 3 months ago, 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, literally. So you want to have a better marriage, you have to prioritize. I don't say a weekly date night, that's hard. How about every other week start with a date night? I guarantee you, just doing that date night with a little positive communication, things will get 30 to 40% better. And then we can deal with bigger problems.
I dealt with a couple a while ago, and they're working on the marriage and made tremendous success. And it was a right-wing Hasidic rabbi that told them that once a week you must go on a date, night, day, and they kept it because of the fear of heaven more so than the fear of human beings, and they did so. And I must say that from my side, I was impressed with the rabbi who gave them the advice, but even more so with the couple who accepted the advice. But I want to go back to the first question that Dr. Bruce said to you, asked, and that is, communication and the lack of communication. What other things are you actually seeing or what are some of the things that are creeping into our community that's really creating problems?
Okay, number 2 would be untreated mental health issues. Be the second most important problem couples are facing. Individuals need to assess, are they taking care of their mental health issues? Depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, whatever it might be, post-traumatic stress disorder, from watching too much TV or watching what's happening in Israel, whatever. People come back overloaded and will leash out at their spouse. So I think that that's a very big issue. Are they taking responsibility? And if they're not, then they're going to have a harder time. But one way to take responsibility is, if you see yourself as depressed or anxious or with PTSD, reach out and get some help. Start going for help. Marriages will probably get better if individuals are getting more help.
So the big question that I have for both of you, and that is, number one, at what point do I go for help? My spouse is coming home after a hard day's work. Whatever the situation is, we're not communicating properly. At what point do I go for therapy? And at what point do I say, hey, you know what? I need medication, or my spouse needs medication. When do I go to a psychiatrist, and when do I go to a therapist?
I'll tell you from a therapist's perspective. In terms of medication, my feeling is like this. Try your best with a good round of therapy. Try for a few months. Don't go to a therapist for 1 or 2 times and say, I'm not interested, unless they're terrible. But if they're okay, stick with them for a few months, see how you do. If after a few months, if the symptoms are significant enough, when I say symptoms, I mean like this. Are you functioning in life? Can you sleep at night? Are you eating? Are you going to work? If that's fine, keep up your therapy. But if you're feeling debilitated by mental health issues, that's a time that I would recommend to a psychiatrist, let's look into this a little bit deeper. What do you think?
I think you get the opposite answer from me, which is that to see the psychiatrist earlier rather than later, because months can go by, right? I've got a bit of even a spicier question, spicier question than that. I see a really lot of bad therapy out there, particularly around abuse, trauma. I see tons of terrible couples therapy. First of all, some ideas about why that is. And two, the person who goes for that kind of help is in a bit of a vulnerable situation in terms of trying to assess, wait a second, is this person not skilled enough, appropriate, not for me? What kind of guidelines would you give people so that they don't get stuck with someone who's ultimately...
And I'm here bursting. I have to jump in.
Burst.
Not only that, you said before that, give the therapist a few sessions. My question is, if I went to a bad restaurant, would I go back or try the food again? No, I hate this restaurant. I'm not going back. I went to the therapist. The therapist didn't help me or didn't really understand. Why am I giving that guy 6 months, paying him or her good money that I work very, very hard for, and say, oh yeah, why don't you give her a little bit of time until they really get to understand you. If you can't understand me right away, I'll find something else. If I don't like the restaurant, if I don't like the suit or dress that I bought, I'm going to another store.
Well, definitely shop around. So look for the qualifications, look for their experience. People talk to people, find out who people went to and they liked or didn't like. So there's 100%. You may not like your therapist, you don't like them, him or her, go to another therapist. But don't be a person that jumps to 5 different therapists. Probably half of them are fairly good. So stick with it a bit. I was referring to the question, when do you go for medication? So that is a big question.
No, I definitely changed the topic, and we can certainly get back to that. But there's a converse of what you're saying, which is you're going to someone and you're not really seeing any results. What we find quite a bit is actually just the converse. Everybody would love to go and talk to someone and have them listen empathically to active listening. Just get it off your chest, whatever happened. And the sessions just repeat that way. You walk in and the expectation is, tell me how awful your week was, and then there's someone sitting there very empathically saying, oh, not empty pity, but listening with an empathic ear, that feels good for everyone. That's another way that people can end up months and months later, but really not making any concrete progress.
See, what I'm finding is sometimes a husband and wife go, and one of them said, I fell in love with this therapist. The other one says, I can't stand this therapist. In a case like that, I would say, in all probability, sometimes this therapist got to the heart of the problem too quick. Before they had a rapport, they were able to point out your shortcomings. And therefore, I'm not going back to this guy. He seems to understand me maybe too well.
Well, there's not one example of a couple that goes to marital therapy where each of the members of the marriage is not going in there with the intention of wanting the therapist on their side.
Right.
Okay, I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Let me be very honest. Marriage family therapy is a very hard business I'm in. Marriage couple counseling is extremely difficult. I'll tell you why. People will go in for like minor depression, minor anxiety. I'm not feeling good, I'm a bit down, right? All the time. Who goes for marriage therapy? It's not a minor problem, it's usually bad. So the whole culture of marriage therapy, people are coming in like stage 4 already when they come to, right?
Well, but I'm the rabbi. They're coming to me to get the divorce.
Correct.
But that's why it's very easy to measure.
And then sometime you and other rabbis will send me their cases. We're stage 5 at that point, right? It's difficult work. So it's a hard field to be in, but there's a lot of, you need to train well and have some extra above graduate school, real postgraduate training. Like you really got to train in John Gottman, you got to train in Sue Johnson, you got to train in Harville Hendricks. There's some great marriage therapists, but it takes years of experience, it takes practice, it takes a good personality, and a good personality could balance out both sides. You just have to know how to do it well.
Rabbi Schonbuch, you call yourself rabbi. What are the chassan and collar teachers doing wrong or not doing enough of? That's the real question. The family is really the reason why Yiddishkeit lived for the last 3,000 years. It was the family. Back in Europe, it was not the yeshivas. It was the family. So we got to keep the family together. Divorce is crazy today in the Orthodox community. So what do we have to tell our chassan teachers, our kala teachers? What are we doing? And we have to change. And it's very nice to shut the telephones. I 100% agree, but I think we're oversimplifying it when we say, okay, we'll shut the telephones and everything will be great. Sometimes maybe they have to, during the day, I say to people, choose an article. If you're online anyways, get something that you're going to discuss. Let your husband know, hey, I read this article today. That's what we're going to discuss tonight at the dinner table. But I think it's more than that. I think their education, there's a problem within our education. For something that's so important like marriage, we're not educating our boys and girls the way they have to be, or I should say young men and young ladies.
But Rabbi, they get that education prior to getting married, or maybe shortly, for a short period of time after they get married. The Rabbi's talking about cases that he's seeing people have been married for 10 or 15 years. That education is way behind them. I think the more appropriate person that we might be talking about is either going for psychological professional help or going to the rabbi. Don't you agree?
You got me to think. You notice I did calm down.
Not thinking is not one of your weaknesses.
No. Nevertheless, I'll still say, if you have a real good foundation, I really think there's a problem with him in the foundation. That's perhaps what I'm saying. So even the couple that sees, the couple that I see, first of all, we're seeing, not only are we seeing more divorces, but divorces within the first and second year. So, Rabbi Shonbuch, is that correct?
100%. I'm hearing of certain classes coming back from seminary, yeshiva. 50% of certain classes are already divorced after the first or second year. The problem is here, so I would answer two parts. Part one is as follows. The problem is that the limited time couples that are engaged for a few months or 6, whatever it would be, most of the education they get from chassan and kala teachers is hilchas nida, is harchakas, is nida. They don't get the relationship education they need. Number two, I would mandate from the Beis Din and from the Rabbanim that chassan and kala classes need to continue after they get married, because that's where the real work starts. So they spend a few months waiting to get married and preparing, now follow up for 6 months to a year. Let's say it's not every week, let's say it's once a month. I think you'll see more hatzlacha. Number two, with those long-term couples with more problems, this is what I really see clinically. One is that usually there's two issues. One, perhaps, is stress. Stress is a big factor. People are not coping well. Can end with larger families, it's difficult. Making a living is hard. So reducing stress, sometimes the best answer is not marriage therapy, it's getting more cleaning help in the house. Sometimes it's going out for a date. You don't know what the real problem is. Sometimes there's real problems in intimacy that they're not working through together. Sometimes there's not enough intimacy. So that's a very important issue as well. But there's a more serious issue from the more serious cases I'm seeing. A lot of marriages break down because of narcissism. And so that's a very big issue, I think, in marriage therapy. They're coming to you, it's serious because they're narcissists. And it's hard to work with. Well,
you're talking about the same thing, really, because narcissism ultimately emanates from emptiness. And that's what you were describing before, was the absence, really, of something, getting back to Frankel, something more meaningful, either on an individual level or on a couple's level. We would love to hear a lot more about what you're seeing in your practice. Unfortunately, we're out of time at this time. But if you have any questions or comments about this episode or another episode of The Rabbi and the Therapist, we would be more than happy to hear from you. The email address to contact us is located below. So with that, we want to thank Rabbi Schonbuch for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Rabbi and the Therapist.